If it was meant to make a bold statement, this Conservative majority budget appears to have fallen a little short. Steady as she goes was how one analyst put it. More tweaks than transformation. There are very few tax changes for individuals. As expected, public servants will see their workforce cut, their pensions reduced. The much anticipated cuts to old age security are laid out in this budget, as well as some changes to immigration. And there is some spending, much of it with an eye to job creation. Senior correspondent Terry Milewski has the details for us, including some surprises. Terry.
Well, Peter, with one eye on a shaky recovery, the government tried to make sure that this budget was not just about cuts, cuts, cuts. In fact, fiscal conservatives are already complaining that it's really just a modest slowdown in the growth of federal spending.
We will implement moderate restraint in government spending. The vast majority of the savings will come from eliminating waste in the internal operations of government, making it leaner and more efficient.
That means, says the finance minister, that the deficit will slowly shrink to $10 billion in 2013, $1 billion in 2014, and a surplus of $3 billion in 2015. No slashing and burning needed.
We have no need to resort to the drastic cuts being forced upon some other developed countries today.
In fact, the cutbacks will amount to less than 5% of the public service, saving $5.2 billion a year by 2015. Back office spending in government departments will be cut, but not too much. 19,200 federal jobs will be phased out over 3 years, but that's less than half what the Liberals cut in the 90s. In fact, it doesn't even cut all the jobs the Conservatives have added since they took office.
This is hardly a dramatic reduction in the number of people who work for the Government of Canada.
But in addition, federal pension benefits will shrink. Public servants, the armed forces, the RCMP, and MPs will all pay more into their pensions and receive less. Some posh diplomatic residences overseas will be sold off. The CBC will lose $115 million over 3 years. And where is the funding for the F-35? The budget coyly states that Canada will buy new fighters, but the F-35 itself is never mentioned, an interesting omission. Instead, there's lots about promoting growth, new spending on innovation, research, training, infrastructure. There are tax credits for business and, as promised, faster environmental reviews for big projects.
One project, one review, completed in a clearly defined time period.
Another big change concerns old age security. The age of eligibility will rise from 65 to 67, but not until the year 2023. What is coming much sooner is a big hike in cross-border shopping allowances. Today, if you're away for 24 hours, you'll only get $50 duty-free. But this summer, you'll get $200. And if you're away 48 hours, instead of $400, you'll get $800. Plus, forget the pennies. Finally, the annoying penny is to be phased out.
Free your pennies from their prisons at home and those jars they're in and give them to charity.
The opposition, though, was not in a charitable mood. For them, the budget was a flop.
In the long term, the continuation of these conservative policies will leave the greatest economic, ecological, and social debt in our history in the backpacks of future generations.
This government is spending more on government advertising than any government in the history of Canada, and they're not cutting a nickel from government advertising. Not a penny, if there were pennies anymore.
But the phase-out of the penny will happen slowly, just like the changes to the OAS and the cuts to the public service and the cuts to the deficit. In fact, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation says the spending cuts don't go nearly far enough, which is kind of good news for the government, because it balances those who say it goes too far and may suggest to folks in the middle that the budget got it about right. Peter.
All right, Terry, thanks very much. Terry Milewski on Parliament Hill tonight.